My friends, good day. Macron made a fool of himself today on Twitter, on X. He posted a tweet that made everyone laugh, especially across the Atlantic in the United States. Let me tell you about it. It starts off grimly, but I'll explain that shortly. But the main point he's making is that France is going to spend 30 million euros by 2030 to fully enter the race for artificial intelligence. To give you an idea of the scale of the numbers the Americans are talking about, OpenAI, the people behind the company that created ChatGPT, spend $1 billion a month. That means more than 30 million a day. So the money Macron wants to spend by 2030 wouldn't even last them a day. Another thing, NVIDIA, which is the heart, if you will, of the hardware side of artificial intelligence, has a revenue of $360 million per day. So every day the revenue is 12 times higher than what Macron wants to spend by 2030. So you can imagine that this number made people laugh because it's completely out of touch with reality. It's like a child coming with a €5 bill and trying to buy a new car. You think, wait a minute, you're off by several orders of magnitude. Not just a little, but really by a lot. Moreover, what do we learn? We learn that this money, a part of it, will be spent on the climate. Honestly, as an African, that's a colonized mindset. I'm telling you directly. When people back home show patterns of behavior or thinking like that, we call them colonized. Sorry, I have to say it. That's pure subservience. I mean, who invented this whole story about global warming? At the beginning, it was created like many ideologies by the Americans. In the 1970s, they were talking about cooling. They even wrote to the president at the time telling him, yes, it's going to cool down in a catastrophic way. Later, they started talking about global warming. After that, they talked about disruption, about change, all that. So regularly, they changed the terminology. The only thing that doesn't change is the taxes, okay? The confiscatory taxes. That's the first point. Afterwards, the Americans dropped this story. They do that often, you know? Like, do you remember, for example, they invaded Afghanistan, they stayed, then one day they said to themselves, what are we doing here? They packed up their things, they left, and then they left everything in the hands of the Taliban. So, I mean, if you look at the Americans, they're capable of making big mistakes, but they're also capable, you have to admit, they have this quality of being able to reverse course. The vassal never reverses course. That's how you spot him. He always pushes forward and keeps to the master's tradition, even if the master has changed it. Look, the Americans, I was saying that they were talking about, even American companies spent the last 15 years talking about global warming, except that since AI arrived, what did they realize? They realized that they need energy, they need astronomical amounts of energy to run their data centers. So they're building 10 data centers, plus they're using every method known to man to generate energy. Whether it's gas, oil, solar, nuclear, coal, whatever, just find me energy, bring it at any price. So that's where they are now. They've pulled out of the COP initiatives and all that stuff. The Europeans, instead of understanding as vassals, I'm talking about the leaders, instead of realizing that the tide has turned, that all of this is over, that it's finished, well, what do? They keep persisting in their stupidity, so they show up with pennies in a fight where people are talking about trillions, and they come with 30 million, and then they're able to say, yes, but part of it will go to the climate. Actually, the climate has become a racket. Basically, you have to pay lobbying groups, collection groups. You can't do anything without paying them. Even when you have little money, they still take some. And that's a civilization that's going down the drain because of that. Quite simply, Europe can't cope, whether it's France, the United Kingdom, all of them. They will never be able to move forward in this century with these kinds of measures, with these kinds of things hanging over their heads. I'll just give you an example. Later on, he made up for it. As I was saying, he announced other figures saying, yes, we're going to spend billions, we're going to attract scientists, we're going to build data centers, all that, but still, you have to understand one thing. It's not money that necessarily brings success. It's not necessarily a question of money, but the effectiveness of money. Now, a billion in the United States is not worth a billion in Europe. The same money, the same check won't get you as far in Europe as it will in the United States. Why? Because in Europe, everything is crippled by regulations and procedures. I'll give you an example so you really understand that this is very deep. What I'm about to tell you isn't just anecdotal, it's very profound. Look, the United Kingdom, they're in the process of restoring the British Parliament. That's the Parliament in London, near the Thames. Well, that old building needs restoration. They have to change the carpets, the plumbing, the electricity, all of that. Okay, do you know how much that's going to cost? Well, it's estimated today that it will cost around 50 billion euros, 40 billion pounds sterling, 50 billion euros. And that I can tell you right now, I'm not going to be wrong in saying this. I'm not taking a big risk in telling you this, that it's going to go way over that budget. Also, do you know how long it will take? It's going to take 60 years. Don't stop extending the deadlines. It's going to go up to 60 years. In reality, it's even going to go beyond that. Who knows? We might reach 200 billion and we might reach 150 years, which means we're getting into totally absurd numbers that no longer really allow a civilization to move forward. Because at this rate, things are deteriorating. That means the first office you renovated will need renovation again before you even finish the last office. You see? So it's not possible. An office is never going to last 60 years anyway. So, during the restoration or during the renovation, you'll have to renovate it again. Of course, some people will say you picked bad examples. It's a building that's important, that's historic and all that. Okay, let's take something that's not historic at all. The HS2 rail. The United Kingdom is trying to build the railroad, a high-speed railroad. So they want to build So it was, I think, roughly less than 300 kilometers of track, right? They've been working on it since 2009. They've been working on it for 17 years. They haven't built a single meter of rail and they've spent 100 billion. Okay, is rail, is it something? Is it an innovative technology? Is it historic? Something like that? You see, I visited in Utah in the United States, a museum about the construction of the railroad that crossed the United States. So I don't remember the exact numbers, but there were some pretty staggering figures, like they finished, for example, an 80-kilometer stretch of rail in one day, one day. They started working really hard. By day's end, 80 kilometers of rail were laid. The British rail, which they've been stuck on for 17 years, could have been finished in 3 days at that pace. See what I mean? So, and by the way, other countries have built railways. Morocco, China, other countries have built railways. Much more complicated than the British one. They started later and finished earlier. And now they're selling tickets, running trains and everything. It didn't go anywhere. What you need to know is that today, European countries, France, the United Kingdom, are plagued by the grift. It's the ideology of the grift, the ideology that comes and takes. And at that point, you can pour in as much money as you want, you will get absolutely nothing. In the United Kingdom today, sometimes we spend 15 years just doing a sociological impact study. We fill out hundreds of pages of files just to talk. What is the sociological impact? What is the climate impact? What is the impact on diversity? What is the impact on wildlife? And that feeds thousands of commissioners, agencies, experts, and consulting firms who are stealing the country's money, taking it for themselves. In the end, you spend billions and accomplish nothing. You're left with an empty lot and piles of PowerPoints and PDFs. That's how it is. So it won't go any further than what Macron says. He announces numbers. But honestly, if the Americans announce 100 billion, they'll go much further than the French who announce 100 billion, you see, or the British. The British, it's simple. If they announce 100 billion, it'll just end up in a PowerPoint PDF. Nothing will actually happen. The French, probably 90% of that money will go to meal expenses, taxi fares, miscellaneous deductions, and so on. There you go, then eventually embezzlement and all that. You don't really know what we've done anymore. That's France, we know. Nothing can be accomplished anymore. The great achievements of the past are over as long as this caste stays in power. That's simple. We have to admit it right away. Another thing that struck me in Macron's tweet is when he said, "We believe in science." That's very sinister because it means what he wants is to turn France into a technocracy. France is not, even if I look at the constitution, it's not a technocracy. It's not a country where decisions are made by men in white coats with test tubes who decide what's good for the people, and then it's imposed on them. Technocracy will create situations where they present things as inevitable, but that's just the way it is. Yes, ma'am, I know it's true that it creates poverty, it raises taxes, it causes inflation, it has caused disasters, it has caused businesses to close, massive outsourcing, misery, all of that. Yes, but it's science. We follow the science. You see, it allows you to shift the blame onto some kind of abstract authority. We imagine some kind of soulless thing, then a completely abstract truth. It's the one making the decisions. And us, we're just technocrats who are here to apply what science says. Science, let me say right away, science is the expression. I studied engineering. France, the soul, science, it's the expression of the dominant classes. It's very simple. Why? Because as someone who is dominated, you can't buy science. You need to know that. If you're dominated, you can't get scientific results for yourself. Because what needs to be said, you don't tell children that. Besides, even my daughter, she's 7 years old. I don't tell her that. You shouldn't think that scientists just wake up in the morning. They just get in their car like that. They go to the lab to do research. They search, they just want to find things like that. No, that's not it. Science needs funding. The average scientist is broke. You can ask any scientist, it's a scientific truth. The average scientist is broke. So if he's broke, he needs money. He needs money, so he's simply for sale. And what will happen is that's what decides things. And if you want concrete, specific examples, look, for example, at the scandals until quite recently related to the tobacco industry. The tobacco industry became very good at paying scientists. So they won't do it directly. What they'll do is they'll create a foundation, for example. They'll give the money to the foundation. The foundation will pay a university. The university will grant research funds and all that. And actually, these people who are paid to find something. You see, so they'll find what we want them to find. You see, because that's the thing. That's how it is. It's the sponsor who actually decides the outcome. And if you just take cigarettes, for example, until recently, doctors were advertising them. For cigarettes, you see, the science of the time or their way of seeing science didn't stop them from advertising cigarettes. They even advised pregnant women to smoke. They told them you should smoke because it helps reduce stress. There are pictures from the 1950s and 60s showing this. There were nurses walking around the hospital from bed to bed with big cardboard boxes full of cigarettes to sell cigarettes to patients. Nurses in those years, it was common, you see. So you have to be careful with science. Science, there's what they call a consensus, which is actually it's kind of like that. It's just like that. That's pretty much it. It's because we live in the era of cancel culture. So there's what's called a false consensus, which means we're going to come in with some information. And then we see it being endorsed by a certain number of scientists who are paid to say it's true. Then from there, anything they say. The opposite, even if it's true, gets criticized. There are examples. Nobel Prize winners end up being pushed to the sidelines, silenced, and then inevitably a consensus is created. Take, for example, the climate issue, which has really become Europe's obsession, which has become the bank and is bleeding Europe dry in the 80s. Well, the climate. Imagine that, for example, French public radio and media forbid themselves from bringing in people who say the opposite of the official narrative on climate. So, you see what I mean. How can you create a consensus if a radio station brings in, for example, someone who tells you that climate change is a complete scam, which just allows the flow of investments, the flow of know-how, jobs and companies to be moved out and take them elsewhere while making you poorer, which is something you can measure, you can verify yourself. And well, if someone comes and tells you that on a public radio, the public radio will be fined. No. The public radio. If they bring someone like that, they'll bring an army of opponents in front of him who will shout and yell to tell him that he's wrong. Who's confused? Yes, you're confusing climate and weather, all that. Well, the day Europe is dead and buried, they'll put a stone, a stele, and they'll say, here live people who didn't confuse weather and climate. So, the time is coming when, well, we're already in it. For many people, it's a reality. The time is coming when this ideological madness will start to show. It will show in the standard of living of millions of people, in the income of millions of people. It will really show. It's not like before when there was David Vincent, who knew that there were extraterrestrials among us, but he still had to convince others. The nightmare has already begun. It won't be like that anymore, really. but everyone in their daily lives will be able to realize it. The only lasting thing that the eco scam will bring is decline. That will be lasting. There will be no return from the decline. You see what I mean? It's going to take a miracle. I don't know what kind of miracle, and it's not about that. There are people, yeah, but anyway, look. In 45, Europe was demolished. You see, it was destroyed, it was leveled, there were deaths, refugees, all that. And after that, it bounced back from its ashes. That's it. Yeah, except that, examples like these are misleading, okay? They're misleading because history doesn't always repeat itself in exactly the same way. Let me give you a simple example. In 1945, a large part of the planet was living in shacks. You see what I mean? In 1945, the world needed Europe, yes. As much as Europe was on its knees, there were many countries in the rest of the world that hadn't even gone through World War II, but were in worse shape than Europe. You see what I mean? So Europe had the chance to wake up all that. In 1945, the Chinese were starving. They couldn't even feed themselves, the Chinese. You see what I mean? So India didn't have industries. It was a British colony. When did they get their industry independence? I think India. Come on, just from memory. Don't quote me or say someone told you. India, let's say, roughly, I'd bet on 49, 48, give or take, plus or minus 2, 3 years, it should be around that time. But I mean, today India has a space program, so very heavy industries, makes cars. You see what I mean? China, same thing, industries. I mean, today, if Europe disappears, well, the world might take 3 weeks to realize they're gone. It's not the same thing. So Europe is destroying itself, except this time, well, it might be an irreversible destruction. That's why I'm telling you about this. And so that's why I found the beginning of Macron's email so grim. Yes, we believe in science. Like, yes, everyone, the whole planet, they believe in charlatanism, witchcraft, all that, except us, we believe in science. For them, science is just an obsession with the climate and a colonizing mindset. Even the Americans, their masters, have dropped this climate agenda, yet they still insist, we'll save the climate. You can't even handle street vendors in front of the Eiffel Tower or in front of the Metro Line 4 station in the 18th district, you see. You can't even handle that. And you want to manage the Earth's climate. There you go. We spend billions managing the Earth's climate. That's what you've done with those billions. Recently, there was a company that wanted to sell insects. They wanted to sell insects to make the French eat insects. They went bankrupt. They went bankrupt like fools. They shouldn't have even existed. First day you could have known. First day you look, it's like if I tell you, look, I'm going to make an announcement. I'm looking for investors because I want to sell couscous in Greenland. Okay, couscous, at least there are millions of people who sell it, who eat it. It's not like insects. It's not like vermin porridge, you see. At least couscous, there are millions of people who sell it, okay, or who eat it. So if I talk to you about selling it in Greenland, the idea itself isn't totally stupid, but it has no chance of succeeding. Because go try to convince them. Go convince 60,000 people over there. It's not even a big market. Go onto the ice, running around with your pot trying to sell them couscous. You see, it's not really for you. But even this project, as stupid as it sounds, is a bit more solid than wanting to make the French eat cockroach, spider, and vermin porridge. And yet these people took millions and they went under. Look at my book, Astrology. Read the book, Astrology. You'll see that bankruptcy is part of these people's business model. There in the United Kingdom, just a few days ago, a company went under. They wanted to build an electric airplane. We're talking about electric airplanes. The problem is, since we're in climate theocracies, United Kingdom, France, all that, I mean, as soon as someone comes up with anything, you just add climate to it. Climate bike, climate microwaves, climate shoes. Then the journalists show up. And right behind them are the investors. Oh yes, they're making a climate product because investors aren't stupid or ideological. The investor, he's not into ideology, but he knows that if you talk about climate, you'll get subsidies, credits, all that stuff. So he knows it's easy money. But once he's taken the money, he just wants to get out after that. So a company that wanted to make planes, eco-friendly planes, battery-powered and all that, well, that's over. Millions lost before bankruptcy. All right, maybe I should stop. You know what? I'll stop. I'll stop criticizing the climate. I think I'm missing my calling. I should do a tauba, a teshuvah, as they say. I should do a teshuvah. And then come up to you like this, show you the book, tear it up in a kind of, way, and tell you, there you go. I realized I went outside, I saw nature, I understood that the climate is changing, that they're destroying the planet. A little bit of whining always works in these things. And then afterwards, well, I know the journalist, I'll say it right away. I'll have the journalist, everyone will say, yes, aldosterone. He woke up, he was in climate blasphemy for a very long time. He needs to have his mouth washed out with soap. And then there you go. Today, he fell in line. That's it. I feel like falling in line. Sometimes I want to fall in line. Well, after that, I ask for grants to fight against global warming, or maybe to get a better idea myself. So I ask for a private jet, a crew, and then I'll travel around the world. That's it. I'll go to the Maldives. I'll go to the Seychelles, where there are beaches, because you feel climate change more when you're on a beach. I'll take a thermometer, a ruler, all that. I'll go take notes for the climate. That's all. After that, we close up shop. This is a joke, my friends. It's just not possible. Anyway, anyway, what do you want me to say? That's how it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just weren't lucky. There you go. Anyway, that's how it is. Honestly, you know me, without a revolution, none of this would go anywhere. You know it. I think everyone knows it by now, but while we wait, we pretend that things will change on their own. Hollande, he didn't like people who said he's not my president. Yet Macron today, if you compare him to Hollande, there are people who say he wasn't lacking in qualities after all compared to Macron. Well, just think about the guy who will make you miss Macron. Think about the guy who will make you say, yeah, maybe we were a bit unfair to Macron. We should have. Yeah, in the end, he did have some qualities. There was a chance for redemption with him. It's possible people say so. That's just how it is. I don't know, but I'm telling you. Maybe I'm right in some way. That's terrible. I wish I were wrong, but there's still a chance that I'm right about all this. Thank you, my friends, for watching this video. Up to this point, it's all over the place. I realize that it's all over the place. A lot of people tell me, yeah, make short videos for us. Well, we're not on TikTok either, but make short videos for us. We've got a bit of that vibe, all that, but there you go. For now, we can still talk. Talking is free. No, I think this whole thing is messed up. Like, was it Jack Lang who said that, or Mitterrand? I can't recall who said it. One of them. Nasty business, huh? I'm following the mess right now. Wow. Yeah. We're going to have to take care of that, I think, honestly. I think we need a real revolution. And then I almost said, I have things to say. I think that right now, you see, I'm in the middle of, you hear silences, you see, I'm talking, you hear words, then you hear silences between them. Actually, those silences are censorship. It's like click, 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 click. It's moderation at work. So there are a lot of things I edit, but I edit them inside. So I'll stop here. I'll edit the video and then upload it for you. See you very soon, my friends.